World War II may have been the induction of rebuilding and peace for most European nations, but Germany would continue to be plagued with turmoil until many years later. Germany was split into two after its surrender. The west of Germany was under the sovereignty of America, France, and Britain, while the east of Germany was under the control of the Soviet Union. Peculiarly, Berlin, Germany's capital located in East Germany, was also divided into two. On June 24, 1948, in a tragic attempt to take full control of Germany and drive out the Western powers' influence over the country, the Soviet Union blocked all land routes and entrances into the west of Berlin. By doing so, the Soviets hoped to forcefully make West Berlin surrender sovereignty to the Soviets through siege and attrition tactics by preventing necessities from entering the western half of the city. Moreover, due to tragic bombings from World War II, many industries of Western Europe were destroyed, and their economies were left in devastating shambles. Seeing their fellow men in dire situations, America decided to help rebuild the European nations, including Germany, through financial assistance. On April 3, 1948, the Marshall Plan, a $12 billion economic aid to Western Europe, was signed into effect by President Truman. In an attempt to further rectify the financial crisis, the Western powers proposed the idea of changing Berlin's currency in order to gain more economic control over the city. In response to this movement, President Harry S. Truman ordered a massive airlift of supplies into the besieged city. The Berlin Airlift, also known as Operation Vittles or Operation Plainfare, proved triumphant. Through the utmost detail and painstaking planning, the airlift supported the sieged Berliners for approximately 15 months and demonstrated the power of human spirit, solidarity, and perseverance. Consequently, Soviet and American relationships would suffer from such defiance, thereby creating a tarnished reputation for the Soviet Union and the beginning of a bitter and hostile rivalry, the Cold War. Tragic conflicts between two clashing visions split the two sides of Germany, and push for economic control of the country led the Soviets to obstruct all land routes into West Berlin. Following the concessions from Germany in 1945, the Allied and major powers of the time, France, Britain, the United States, and the Soviet Union, held peace conferences at Yalta and Potsdam to decide the fate of Europe, and more specifically Germany. As a result of the conferences, Germany and its capital Berlin were broken into 4 occupation zones, 1 zone for the Soviets and 3 zones for the collective Western Allies. The 3 powers, France, Britain, and the US occupying West Germany, believed in the free and democratic world order led by the United States, while the Soviets in the East envisioned a communist dictatorship under the control of the Soviet Union. Nowhere were these conflicting goals more evident than in the capital city, Berlin, where the West was controlled by the Allied powers and the East was under the Soviet rule. These tragic difference in visions for the future of Germany also marked the start of rising tensions and bitterness between the Western powers and the Soviet Union. Unfortunately, Stalin, the communist leader of the Soviet Union at the time, found the action to be unacceptable and an overextension of Western power. Since Berlin was deep in Soviet-controlled Eastern Germany, an infuriated Stalin ordered his troops to cut off all land access into Berlin to force West Berlin into ceding control through attrition. Seizing full control of Berlin would be a huge symbolic victory for communism and a morale booster for the Soviets. Under Stalin's command, the Berlin blockade began on June 24, 1948, and its effects would reverberate throughout all of Europe and even in the United States overseas. Quote, "What happens to Berlin happens to Germany. What happens to Germany happens to Europe," end quote. Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov. On June 26, 1948, the Western powers would airlift supplies to the West Berliners in order to allow them to survive through the Soviets' beleaguerment. The Soviets couldn't shoot down the planes, for it would be seen as a hostile act of war and break the peace treaties between the 4 powers, as agreed upon during the Potsdam Conference, and lead to another all-out war. The airlift needed to transport 4,000 tons of supplies a day, but the lack of planes and aircrew from rebuilding Europe could only bring in 1,000 tons. Alerted by the news about the grand plan to airlift supplies in order to succor or support fellow Europeans, mechanics from all over Europe didn't wait to assist in the plan. Right away, they hitched a flight to Berlin to help with maintenance. According to Norman DeVoe, a veteran who served in the Air Force, they didn't even hesitate to sign up to deliver coal and other necessities into West Berlin. On August 12, 1948, the Western powers triumphantly reached their goal for the first time. delivering approximately 4,500 tons of supplies.
Logistical effort to make it possible to have so many planes coming in so short intervals. They had to build an entirely new runway in Berlin very quickly to accommodate the planes. It was also very important for the Berliners to organize themselves because although the planes brought in, of course, a lot of food and all kinds of products, it was not enough to keep the city really afloat. So people had to go to accept that lots of things they could not get. They had just to wait for those planes to come in.
This was made possible by the people uniting together and lending a hand towards the cause. It is only through Western solidarity that the people showed up and worked together to support Berlin. Western Berlin's resistance also depended on the people's strong desire for democratic freedom, which was far from Soviet sovereignty. The Soviets who had enacted the blockade used the unstable climate they had created in order to coax the desperate West Berliners into ceding control to them. Food and medicine were offered as consolations, but for a hefty price, relinquishing control of West Berlin to communism. Although some people may have considered the proposition, West Berlin remained defiant. But the airlift shortcoming in the beginning did not stop the Air Force. They persevered, and in the end, their determination was met with success, as they ended up delivering more to Berlin by air than they ever delivered by rail at any given day. Ultimately, this proves that persistence brings out triumph, as demonstrated in the airlift.
We can live without everything we want to eat if someday we have our freedom. 8 to 14 years old, these kids were telling me, an American, what freedom meant. I couldn't believe it. Little voice said, boy, these kids are unusual, how come? And, well, they know freedom's more important than flour.
Furthermore, Operation Little Victuals was started by Gail Halverson, a man driven by sympathy for others. He realized how long the Berlin children went without sweets, so he made it his personal mission to drop candy. He was named Candy Bomber or Uncle Wiggly Wings because he would wiggle his wings up and down to signal that it was him. His spirit brought happiness and joy to many Berlin children, and his name will be forever imprinted in their memories. In the end, the West triumphed over the Soviet Union, for the Soviets finally saw that they could not squeeze Berlin into submission. As a result, the blockade was lifted. On May 12, 1949, the Soviets relented, and the airlift went on for 4 more months to create a surplus, just in case the Soviets decided to continue the blockade again. For the Soviet Union, the blockade became a tragic diplomatic embarrassment, and the Soviets looked like bullies for starving people into submission. This demonstrates the tragic impact of the Soviets' action on its reputation. Due to the United States' effort to foil the Soviets' plan of getting control over West Berlin, this tragic operation made the Soviets and the U.S. develop tense animosities. The U.S. was shocked by the blockade as well, and some even wanted to call for a military response. These broken relations included ideological, economical, and political factors, which soon intensified and caused great rivalry between the West and the East. The tragic isolation the West Berliners experienced back in the day is still occurring today. North Koreans today are getting blockaded from the world to limit their interaction with the globe. Activists are currently trying to fly in media, food, and medicine into North Korea. Drones carry articles to expose them to information regarding countries outside their own and the better living conditions in the other parts of the world. Similarly to the triumphant Berlin Airlift, these unauthorized drops enraged the North Korean dictator, Kim Jong-un, and broke relations between North Korea and the rest of the world. Koreans are tragically made to believe that they have freedom inside their state, but they do not know what true freedom is or even looks like. To the rest of the world, North Korea is an international threat to peace and security. The ideals that were learned in the Berlin Airlift can still affect the present world, and the human spirit shown during the event still resonate in the hearts of other people.
제일 안 좋아하는 게 뭡니까? 약점이. 북한점들이 깨우치는 거예요.
The bravery of these heroic people proves that through the toughest situations, with unity, perseverance, and a drive to stand up for a common cause, that the triumph of the airlift. On the other hand, the Soviets' actions brought them consequences that demolished their repute and other relationships with the world. These tragic events would intensify and bring about another war, but this time a war of political ideas.
But even amidst the bleak Berlin winter, the airlift continued to bring people together in unexpected ways.
hieß es dann.
Each of the larger planes carried 9 tons.
Wir haben die Flugzeuge entladen.
We could unload each plane in roughly 7 minutes. That was 9 short tons of coal.
Kohle.